Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of Writers to Writers. I'm Suzanne Lieurance,
And I'm Simon Rose.
and the last few times here on Writers to Writers, we've talked about how writers often struggle with visibility, and we gave you some tips and advice on how to get noticed so that people know you and your books exist.
Now, we'd also mentioned what to include on a website and how you should blog and maybe send out a newsletter regularly, at least once a month, really, to make sure that you're getting people's attention.
Right. Yeah. And we talked about networking because that's important too. And you can do networking in a variety of ways online. Just listen back to our previous podcast and you'll see we talked about that. And also in person.
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean, in some of these groups, you can meet other people, other writers in person, and they're usually, in my experience, they've always been very welcoming,
Mhm.
especially for those who are just starting out. Because I mean, it can be quite intimidating. I mean, you're going to be, you're a whole new entering a whole new world with your first book and everything, and they're usually, or they've always been very welcoming to me. They were at first for me, that's for sure.
Yeah, me too. I've met some good friends there, made good friends at writing groups, good contacts, gotten some writing jobs and assignments that way. And I don't think it matters what genre you're focused on, you'll find some groups that will be welcoming, because we're writers. So some groups you may go to just for any kind of writers, but also there are groups for your individual, I can't talk today, genre. So that helps too. And there's always going to be something to talk about at these gatherings, like you said, Simon, like your writer's circle.
Oh, in the writers' circle that I have, it's once a month,
Hmm.
and I mean, there are people like me who write fiction and non-fiction, and some of the and some of the ones who come to that are also they're only writing non-fiction, and some of them they're only doing short stories that get accepted into anthologies. And there's a few people who have been to these things who are writing for business and things like that. They're writing for sort of websites and blogs for companies and things like that. So it's all writing.
Right. Yeah. And it just makes you feel more like a professional when you're around other writers. So I think that's great. Okay.
Yeah. Now we've always assumed. I suppose you've always assumed that a lot of these tips and advice on places like our wonderful podcast here and everything, they're all about, they're all for novelists and people who have created these wonderful adventure stories or fantasy novels and things like that. But it's not as it's also there's also non-fiction.
Right.
And now I've written quite a lot of non-fiction myself over the years for children and young adults and everything, and I know you have as well, Suzanne. Now,
Mhm.
how is it? What exactly is non-fiction, though? I mean, how is it defined?
Well, nonfiction can be a variety of things. You can write books, you can write articles, like you said, blog posts, documentaries, all kinds of things. But the difference between nonfiction and fiction is while fiction is sort of made up, you can put some truthful things in there, but the story is created uh, from your imagination. But nonfiction is based on facts, real events, and actual people. Okay. So the primary goal of maybe fiction is to entertain. It can educate you to a certain degree too about things, because I've learned a lot of stuff by about different places and time periods by reading fiction or historical fiction. But the difference in nonfiction is its primary goal is to educate or inform or to analyze something. Okay, so that's the main difference between the nonfiction and fiction. Um, you
So
mentioned,
if you've written the non-fiction, then.
Mhm.
And I know you've written quite a bit of this, just like I have. So, are you an expert on all those subjects then that you've written these things on? I mean, on like scientific stuff or really technical topics. Are you an expert on those?
Well, when you start out, you may not know anything about it, okay? But that's why you do research. And I've done a variety of books on things that I wouldn't say I was an expert a lot about. But what you do is you find the other experts, and that can be things you do, either by finding other work. What I usually do when I'm writing nonfiction, the first thing I do is I go look for all the children's books I can on that particular topic, the ones that are already out there. Because you'll usually find there are already books on nonfiction. Let's say I know you and I were talking before this podcast, and you said you'd written a book on owls or mice or something. Okay, well, yours isn't going to be the only book out there on owls. There's going to be a lot of them, right? So what you want to do if you're not an expert on owls, but maybe you're writing a book about owls, then you go look at all those other books and see what's already out there. And the reason I do that is so for one, I'm getting information that will help me. And for the second reason is I'm trying to see, well, what different spin can I give on this topic? So I'm not just rewriting the same information. So that's kind of where I start. Where do you start when you're going to write nonfiction? Like on your owl book, what do you do?
Oh, it was the same. It's the same thing for me. I mean, with things like that, I knew that there were books and websites and things like that. Obviously, websites these days. There would be a website on a particular animal that I didn't know anything. Well, I'll say not know anything about. I mean, I knew a little bit about them, and some
Right.
of the more well-known animals, like an elephant or a grizzly
Mhm.
bear or something like that. But I would still need to do. I would still need to do research into the animal and its prey and its habitat and this sort of thing. And I
Mhm.
found that with over the years, with a lot of the books I'd been assigned to write that weren't, say, about nature or famous buildings or weather patterns or whatever it may be. Sometimes they'd be about historical stuff. Now,
Mhm.
I am not an expert on every historical time period. I mean, I do have a degree in history, and I've written historical fiction novels and things like that. But
Mhm.
when I was assigned to write a book about something in World War II, about the Battle of the Atlantic in World War II, or something like that, I would. In that book, there would be a couple of pages at least that was about a type of battleship and what its armaments were and how thick the steel was on its outer edges or whatever, how many people were in the crew and all sorts of things. So I would have to make sure that I got this stuff right, because a lot of the time people would be reviewing these books, and you didn't want to be caught out by not getting the facts straight and everything. So I found that I always learned a lot whilst writing and doing the research. I learned things that. Topics I thought, well, I know a little bit about this, but I'd usually find out stuff as well.
Yeah, and I've taken writing assignments from publishers about topics I knew nothing about. For example, I was asked by one publisher to write an economics dictionary for high school kids. I don't know anything about economics, but I researched it and wrote that book. And then another book I was asked to write by a different publisher was about Civil War weapons and strategies. And I'm no expert on the Civil War, but I think maybe you find like I've found, Simon, when you research the topic and you write a book about it, it's often really interesting finding out the information that you're going to include in your own book in a different way somewhat. And so I've always enjoyed the research part of writing nonfiction. My voice is giving
Well,
out.
yeah, I mean, this is the thing too. I mean, I mean, you can talk about being an expert and things. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
I've written quite a few books about famous buildings, for example,
Mm.
whether it to be some sort of a church or a cathedral or something like that, um, or something a more modern structure in a modern city and things like that. And this, I wouldn't be making a trip to that particular place to go wandering around inside
Right.
the temple or the church to do. There'd be places where I could find things out online on websites and things like that. But it would be fascinating, and you'd learn quite to learn this while you were doing the book.
And sometimes you can use your travel and different things. Like, I don't know if you can see it because I have a background on here, but I wrote a book about the ancient Maya. And when I was doing that one, my family and I, we went to the Yucatan Peninsula, and we're visiting there and stuff. And so I got to do, some research on the trip and learn about it. Not that that was the only research I did for the book. I did a lot of online research too. But I've just found all kinds of things you can do for the research for your nonfiction book. So it's really fun to do, that kind of thing. I think
This
in
is it, isn't it? I mean,
it's
if
what?
you're going to show a book, I'll show a book as well. I don't know if you can see that or not. There you are.
Polar bear versus ringed seal. Okay.
Yeah, this was a series of books all about animals, about predators versus prey,
Mhm.
and there was another one all about grizzly bear and the salmon and things like that. I don't know how many pages, maybe 24 pages, lots of pictures and charts and
Mhm.
things like that. And it was a series of six. And everything, and they came out at the beginning of 2024, I think.
Mhm.
And it's yeah, I had to do certainly had to do lots of uh, I didn't assume at the beginning that, oh, well, I know all about polar bears, I don't need to do
Right.
any research. I knew that I'd have to do
Mhm.
some research and learn a lot, and I did, and I thoroughly enjoyed it as I was writing them.
And today it's so much easier to do research than it was, long ago. I mean, just in the 80s, 90s, early 2000, the internet wasn't as expansive as it is now. So you can do, but I always tell people try not to do all your research online. There are other things you can do. And I think we can talk about some of those other ways to do research in some future episodes because we've got a lot of stuff we can talk to people about because you and I've both done a lot of nonfiction writing, not only for kids, but maybe for adults too, and give people some tips that will help them. So I guess
Definitely, I think, yeah, I think so. I think that there are a lot of topics that we got. Well, we're not just that we can cover. We are going to be covering. We're going to be covering quite a few topics about research in future podcasts because I think people are going to find that very interesting.
right, right. So you might want to take notes when you're listening to our nonfiction thing, because hopefully we will give you some tips that you can act on if you're wanting to, get some writing assignments or even write your own nonfiction and self-publish, that kind of thing. So I guess that's all for today, right, Simon?
Yes, I think so, and I think I did note that we're on. You and I are on the same page, which a little joke there when it
Yeah.
comes to writing nonfiction. Uh,
Yeah.
and we'll talk a little bit more about nonfiction and research and things next time around, I think.
Okay. All right. So we want to give our websites where people can tell where they can find out a little bit more about us, or if they have
Oh, I
questions, they
nearly
can
forgot.
send us.
Nearly forgot to do that. Yes, you can find out all about me at simon-rose.com. What about you?
I'm at rightbythesea.com, just like it says above me here. And also get on my mailing list because we talked about newsletters and things in the last or one or two episodes. And my morning nudge is something you can get from me
Oh,
every
yes.
weekday morning with little tips in it. And it'll also take you to other things that I've got that will help you out. So just go to morningnudge.com and sign up for that if you aren't already on my list. So,
Yeah, and people can sign up for my newsletter as well by on the website. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll see you next time.
yeah. And until then, Happy writing.
Okay, okay, bye.
Bye for now.